They said Roman Reigns was done and retired. Turns out, they were just giving him time to reload. Because last night on Raw? The tribal chief didn't just return, he brought a monster with him. 6'8". Cold as ice. No smile. No hesitation. Hikuleo. The new Bloodline Enforcer. And he didn't come to talk. Roman Reigns walked through that curtain like he never left, and immediately declared war on Paul Heyman and his new faction. The Wiseman thought he could build a new empire behind Roman's back? Now he's looking at an empire that came back bigger, badder, and hungry for revenge. The crowd was stunned. The roster? Shook. Because when Roman speaks, the industry listens. And when he declares war, somebody's getting buried. Stick around. Because what happened next? Flipped the whole locker room on its head. After WrestleMania, the silence was deafening. No Instagram cryptic posts. No "I'll be back." No ominous music on SmackDown. Just silence. Like the end of an empire. The tribal chief, the most dominant champion of the modern WWE era, had vanished. And in his place? Power-hungry vultures circled the throne. None closer than Paul Heyman. For over 2 years, Heyman was the mouthpiece, the manipulator, the man who claimed to serve the island of relevancy. But when Roman stepped away, so did the mask. Heyman didn't mourn the king's absence. He moved on. He began quietly assembling talent. Young, hungry, and willing. A new faction began forming, without fanfare, without fireworks. Heyman had done it before with Brock Lesnar. With CM Punk. With The Shield. But this time? He thought he could build something stronger, without Roman. He wasn't wrong about the strength. He was wrong about the silence. Last night on Raw, the silence broke. The lights dimmed. A low, ominous hum crawled across the arena. Not the usual music. Not yet. And then, the note. That single tribal beat, echoing like a war drum. The crowd froze. Not cheered, froze. Every eye locked on the curtain. The commentators fell into stunned silence. And then he walked out. Roman Reigns. No smile. No mic. No "acknowledge me." Just that stare. And right behind him, like a shadow that grew teeth, Hikuleo. 6'8". Built like a weapon. Face like stone. Not a single twitch of emotion. No pyro. No promo. Just two forces walking toward the ring like they owned it, because they did. For weeks, Heyman's new faction had been laying waste to Raw's mid-card and beyond. Positioning themselves as the future. But the moment Roman walked through that curtain, that future collapsed into panic. The tribal chief didn't say a word at first. He didn't have to. His presence said everything. He wasn't here to negotiate. He wasn't back to reclaim the throne. He is the throne. And he brought a new weapon with him. Let's talk about that weapon. Hikuleo isn't a hired gun. He's not just the next muscle-bound enforcer plugged into a story. He's blood. The brother of Tama Tonga and Tangaloa. Son of wrestling royalty Haku. Part of the original fabric that helped define the bloodline long before WWE printed it on t-shirts. But where Hikuleo differs is terrifying. He doesn't talk. He doesn't pose. He doesn't sell merch. He hurts people. His reputation from Japan isn't about wins and losses. It's about the cold violence. The way opponents look at him like he's not human, because he doesn't react like one. Roman didn't just bring an enforcer. He brought a problem. And Paul Heyman? He didn't have a plan for this. When Roman entered the ring, Heyman's face said it all. Shock. Guilt. Fear. And then Roman finally picked up the mic. He didn't yell. He didn't cut a promo. He whispered. You thought I was finished. You thought you could build your little kingdom on my ashes. I didn't fall back. I reloaded. And now, I'm taking everything back. That was it. No challenge. No stipulations. Just a declaration. This wasn't a feel-good return. This wasn't a hero comeback. This was an empire marching back into its own ruins with fire in its eyes, and the firepower to rebuild it by force. Heyman's faction wasn't just being challenged. They were being targeted. And the rest of the roster? They watched from behind curtains and through screens, unsure what side to pick, or whether to run. Because when Roman Reigns comes back, the entire industry pays attention. And when he brings war with him? Somebody's going under. This story isn't about nostalgia. It's not about legacy. It's about power. Who controls WWE? Who runs the locker room? Who dictates the future? Last night didn't give us the answers. It gave us a new question: what happens when the king returns, not to reclaim his crown, but to burn the ones who tried it on? This is Roman Reigns, Reloaded. With Bloodline 2.0 behind him. With Hikuleo at his side. And with every target in WWE already lined up. Stick around. Because what happened next? Ripped every rulebook in half. For over 3 years, Roman Reigns wasn't just the face of WWE, he was the gravity holding the company together. Every episode of SmackDown orbited around him. Every pay-per-view was built on whether he would retain or fall. Every locker room interaction, every promo from a rising star, had to address him directly or indirectly. His dominance wasn't just physical, it was cultural. He was the story. And then, without warning, the story went quiet. No farewell speech. No press conference. No send-off match. 1 week he was holding the undisputed championship above a broken opponent, and the next, he was gone. The silence that followed wasn't just confusing, it was strategic. Because when someone like Roman Reigns disappears, it doesn't happen by accident. And it doesn't happen without consequences. The timeline begins at WrestleMania, when Roman Reigns retained the title yet again. Fans expected fallout. They expected a new arc, a fresh challenge, a reason to tune in the following week. Instead, Roman skipped SmackDown. Then he skipped the next one. And the one after that. Commentators brushed it off as recovery time, a much-needed break after carrying the brand. WWE social channels pushed nostalgia reels and photo dumps. Roman himself said nothing. No tweets. No promos. No off-the-cuff appearances. The bloodline was still present, technically. Solo Sikoa made scattered appearances. Jimmy Uso floundered in mid-card confusion. But there was no direction. No power. No spine. In wrestling, absence doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it means transformation. Roman Reigns didn't just disappear, he went underground. Whispers started. In dirt sheets. On Reddit threads. Among insiders who only speak in half-truths and rumors. Some said he was nursing lingering injuries that had worsened during his record-breaking title run. That he needed actual time to heal, not just the superficial kind the storyline allows for. Others believed he was renegotiating his deal with WWE, angling for even more leverage. Some fans speculated that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, had finally stepped in backstage and forced the company to hold off on Roman's future plans until a blockbuster angle could be executed at the right event. But the most compelling rumor? Roman was watching. Watching as Paul Heyman moved the chess pieces. Watching as factions formed, titles changed hands, and alliances shifted. Watching from the shadows while the empire he built started to erode. There's a difference between being absent and being irrelevant. Roman was never irrelevant. His name still came up in promos. His name still filled arenas. Every time Solo stepped into the ring alone, fans asked where the tribal chief was. Every loss by a former bloodline member was seen as proof that the dynasty was crumbling. The crumbling wasn't accidental. It was designed. Because what better way to rebuild than to let everything fall apart first? Paul Heyman had been the voice, the bridge, the buffer between Roman and the rest of the WWE universe. Without him, Roman never had to explain himself. Never had to shout. Never had to justify his choices. Heyman did it all. But while Roman was gone, Heyman started speaking for someone else. It began subtly. A new prospect here. A backstage handshake there. Heyman making appearances on Raw again, without Reigns. Promos that once hyped the greatness of the tribal chief now hinted at a future beyond the past. Words like evolution and next generation crept into his vocabulary. He didn't say Roman's name. He didn't have to. He had already moved on. Backstage reports indicated Heyman was pitching new ideas to creative. New alignments. Fresh stories. Stories that didn't include Roman Reigns. And creative bought in. Ratings were holding steady, the roster was deep, and the Bloodline brand was fading. Or so they thought. But Roman's vanishing act wasn't a mistake. It was tactical. The man built an empire by being 3 steps ahead. Why wouldn't he do the same off-screen? While Heyman plotted new coronations, Roman was choosing soldiers. While Heyman recruited next-gen talents, Roman was scanning his lineage. While Heyman played chess, Roman studied war. Because what nobody knew, what nobody could know, is that Roman wasn't just stepping away to heal. He was stepping away to plan. And his plan didn't involve recovery. It involved revenge. Every empire that falls leaves ruins. But ruins can be used to build again. Smarter. Stronger. More ruthless. Roman watched the bloodline fracture from the inside and decided not to fix it, but to remake it. He started with Solo Sikoa. The Enforcer. The youngest. The most volatile. Roman planted seeds of doubt months ago, testing Solo's loyalty even while praising it. Then, he vanished, knowing Solo would be lost without him, and malleable. Jimmy Uso, the twin with a shaky moral compass, was left spiraling. Jey Uso had already stepped away, sick of the politics and manipulation. Roman let the cracks grow wider. The splinters were necessary. In Roman's world, family doesn't mean protection. It means selection. And while Heyman was busy forming his new generation faction, thinking Roman was on a beach somewhere counting title belts, Roman was calling a name almost nobody in WWE dared to speak. Hikuleo. The name rang out like a shot in circles that mattered. NJPW. Bullet Club. The Tongans. A legacy of silent, efficient violence. You don't call Hikuleo unless you mean business. You don't bring him in unless you want something finished permanently. Roman called. And Hikuleo answered. It didn't happen in the open. No flight logs. No performance center photos. No teases. Just silence. Until last night. When Roman reappeared on Raw, it wasn't a return, it was a reveal. The months of silence, the absence from SmackDown, the shifting tides of loyalty and power? All part of the plan. Roman didn't leave because he was defeated. He left to let the traitors feel safe. To let Heyman crown himself King of Ashes. Then he walked back in with fire. That's what separates Roman from everyone else. Other superstars chase belts. He engineers wars. Others build factions. He builds legacies. So where was Roman Reigns these past few months? He was doing what real kings do when their kingdoms fall. He was preparing to burn the usurpers. Now, with Hikuleo by his side and the ashes still warm, Roman isn't just back, he's watching every name that cheered in his absence. Every former ally who didn't check in. Every executive who doubted the Bloodline brand. He's not defending anything. He's taking everything. And for those wondering if the return is temporary, a quick run-in before SummerSlam or a shock boost before a quarterly earnings call, think again. Roman Reigns didn't come back for a pop. He came back to gut the system that forgot who made it great. So what happens now? That's the wrong question. The real question is, who survives now that Roman remembers everything? To understand the magnitude of Roman Reigns' war declaration, you have to understand the betrayal that sparked it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It wasn't the kind of betrayal WWE usually packages with chair shots, pyro, and shocking heel turns. It was slow, strategic, calculated. And it came from the man Roman trusted the most. Paul Heyman didn't just serve Roman Reigns. He didn't just cut promos for him. He orchestrated him. Behind the scenes, on camera, and in the locker room, Heyman had one mission: preserve Roman's reign at all costs. He crowned him the tribal chief, ensured the locker room feared him, and protected him from every political landmine that came with being the face of WWE. And then, when the power vacuum opened, he did what Paul Heyman always does. He moved on. The betrayal began not with a speech, but with a whisper. After Roman's disappearance, Heyman didn't panic. He didn't demand updates or go on a search. He stayed visible. Present. And that was the first red flag. Traditionally, when the centerpiece of your brand vanishes, the spokesperson either follows or fades. Heyman did neither. He remained firmly in orbit, just not around Roman anymore. At first, it seemed like a delay. Fans and commentators alike speculated he was holding the line for Roman's eventual return. He gave cryptic interviews. He dropped vague lines about evolution. The signs were there. We just weren't reading them right. Behind the curtain, Heyman was pitching something bigger. Sources inside creative began reporting strange meetings. Heyman was lobbying for more influence on Raw, a brand Roman had only recently stepped away from. He was seen taking meetings with newer stars, the kind who weren't quite top tier yet, but were on the verge. He was building. But not rebuilding the bloodline. He was assembling something new. Something he controlled. Something that would survive with or without Roman Reigns. Because make no mistake, Heyman didn't want to be part of another dynasty. He wanted to run it. The first move came when Heyman appeared alongside a rising heel from NXT, freshly promoted and hungry for a breakout. No official alliance was declared. Just a conversation backstage. Then another. Then came appearances together at house shows, non-televised but deeply intentional. The internet caught on. Clips circulated. Is this Paul's new guy? Why is Heyman on Raw every week now? Fans thought they were being worked. In a way, they were. Because while the public was focused on rumors of Roman's retirement or family drama, Heyman was feeding the next generation of sharks. He wasn't recruiting charisma. He was recruiting control. 3 names began appearing beside him regularly, 2 men and 1 woman. All young, all intense, and all noticeably disconnected from the bloodline legacy. No Samoan heritage. No family ties. Just ambition, and the kind of moral flexibility that Heyman thrives on. Each time a member of the bloodline stumbled, each time Solo lost, or Jimmy lost direction, Heyman's new group gained visibility. Not in front of the camera, but within the company. The most blatant move came when Heyman cut a promo on Raw. He didn't name Roman. But the subtext was blood red. He talked about evolution. About the danger of resting on family ties. About the next era of dominance. About men and women willing to sacrifice the past for the future. It was the most Paul Heyman thing he could have done, ignite a war without throwing a punch. To fans, it was curious. To insiders, it was treacherous. To Roman? It was unforgivable. The truth is, Heyman had seen this moment coming. He'd watched as Roman's reign wore thin, as fans demanded fresh faces, as internal pressure mounted for the company to pivot. Heyman knew Roman couldn't carry the title forever, and when his run inevitably paused, whether by injury, burnout, or politics, someone would have to fill the void. Why not him? Why not now? Heyman had done it before. He was the architect of ECW, the handler of Brock Lesnar, the mentor to CM Punk. He has always found chaos and built control within it. Roman Reigns may have been his masterpiece, but no artist stays loyal to one painting forever. Heyman wasn't betraying Roman out of spite. He was betraying him out of habit. Because in Paul Heyman's world, loyalty is currency, and currency only has value if it keeps moving. So he moved on. What made it worse is how carefully he tried to make it look like he hadn't. In public, he still referred to Roman with reverence. Still spoke of the tribal chief in past tense honor. He even dropped hints that Roman might return, perhaps to bless the new faction, to validate it. It was theater. What he was really doing was rewriting the narrative. In this new era, Heyman would be the permanent piece. Not the mouthpiece, not the second in command, the core. His new faction, unofficially dubbed the Order by fans online, wasn't about bloodlines. It was about order and control. About keeping chaos out, and dominance in. Each member was selected for more than just in-ring skill. The youngest, a high flyer with a mean streak, was recruited not just for agility, but because of his silence. He didn't speak. He executed. The powerhouse, a former MMA fighter with zero legacy ties, was brought in to project fear, not heritage. And the final piece, a brilliant technician and cunning mic worker, was there to challenge every stereotype about who could rise in WWE. None of them were Roman. That was the point. Heyman didn't want to replicate Roman. He wanted to replace him. The betrayal isn't just that Heyman left Roman behind. It's that he thought Roman wouldn't notice. Or worse, that Roman couldn't do anything about it. Heyman believed that with Roman off-screen, the narrative could be massaged. That fans would warm to the idea of a new faction, especially one not built on nepotism. That younger fans would move on. That locker room leaders would choose opportunity over loyalty. And for a time, he was right. Until last night. When the curtain lifted, and Roman walked through, with Hikuleo behind him, the illusion shattered. Heyman's carefully constructed empire was exposed for what it was, a placeholder. And his betrayal wasn't theoretical anymore. It was staring him in the face. Roman didn't just return to reclaim dominance. He returned to expose the lie that Heyman had built in his absence. That WWE could move on without him. That new blood could replace legacy. That Paul Heyman could rule in peace. Roman didn't come back to negotiate. He came back to punish. And now Heyman, the master of strategic betrayal, finds himself outmaneuvered. The very man he taught how to manipulate the system is now using that same playbook, only faster, meaner, and with Hikuleo standing in the wings ready to enforce it. Heyman didn't just gamble on new talent. He gambled that Roman Reigns was finished. That's a bet he's about to lose. Because the betrayal wasn't Roman's absence. It was Paul Heyman's arrogance. And that might cost him everything. Before Roman Reigns walked back through the curtain, Raw was already teetering. It didn't look like chaos on the surface, no invasions, no open rebellions. But if you paid attention, if you looked past the LED screens and mic work, you could see it. Smell it. The structure was collapsing in slow motion. The bloodline, once a symbol of control and dominance, had become fragmented. The pillars were missing, and no one had stepped up to replace them convincingly. Roman's absence wasn't just a void. It was a power vacuum. And in wrestling, nothing invites chaos faster than power unclaimed. Solo Sikoa was still around, but he wasn't leading. He was showing up, squashing a few lower card names, but with no sense of mission. No guidance. The silent enforcer was rudderless, a weapon without a target. Without Roman, Solo looked lost, dangerous, yes, but directionless. And in WWE, directionless means vulnerable. Jimmy Uso wasn't faring much better. His brother Jay had walked away long ago. Unwilling to take part in the manipulation and family mind games that defined the Bloodline's heyday. Jimmy stayed. But his loyalty came off less like strength and more like confusion. He cut inconsistent promos. He flipped between face and heel week to week. Fans didn't know whether to cheer or boo him, and neither did he. Jimmy wasn't representing the Bloodline anymore. He was representing what was left of it. And that's when the real problem started. Because the rest of the Raw locker room noticed. They saw the cracks. They saw the once unbreakable faction slowly fray. And most importantly, they saw opportunity. What happens when the apex predator leaves the food chain? The others come out of hiding. Suddenly, names that had been squashed by Roman's reign started resurfacing with fire. Mid-Carter spoke bolder in interviews. Tag teams once crushed by the Bloodline started cutting promos about taking back what was stolen from them. And Heyman? He saw it all unfolding and did what he does best, he offered a solution. Enter Heyman's new faction. They weren't flashy. They weren't overexposed. They didn't need months of build. Their arrival wasn't about smoke and lights. It was about seizing a window, one that wouldn't stay open for long. They hit hard. They moved fast. 1 week, a backstage beatdown. The next, a high-profile upset. All while Heyman stood in the background, not taking credit, but making sure the camera caught him watching. He wanted the locker room to see the contrast. The old Bloodline was drama. Family disputes. Internal sabotage. His faction was unity. Precision. Efficiency. And for a moment, it looked like the balance had shifted. Raw began to reshape itself in Heyman's image. Feuds were interrupted. Alliances broke. Title chases derailed. Heyman wasn't managing champions, he was managing chaos. And the brand started revolving around it. Backstage, the atmosphere grew tense. Veterans didn't know where to stand. Rising stars hesitated to make statements, unsure who was watching. Younger talent didn't want to align with the wrong side too early. And WWE officials? They played it safe. They stayed silent. Because when Heyman starts grabbing power, even the office watches with caution. By the 4th week of this transformation, Raw was no longer the show where stars climbed. It became a battlefield. Not in the obvious sense. There were no invasions, no locker room brawls. Just silence. Cold shoulders. Backstage hallways turning into territory lines. Matches that used to be about competition suddenly carried undertones of which side are you on? But here's the thing about chaos, it never stays controlled for long. Heyman thought he had it contained. Thought he had replaced Roman's command with his strategy. But the truth was that Raw was a tinderbox. And all it needed was a spark. Then came the rumors. Reports leaked that Roman Reigns had been spotted at the Performance Center. That he was seen having private meetings in Stamford. That unnamed creative heads had booked extra security for an upcoming episode of Raw. The locker room buzzed. Was he coming back? And if he was, what side would Solo be on? What would Jimmy do? Would the Bloodline reunite? Or explode? But the most important question was the one nobody said out loud, would he be alone? The tension grew unbearable. Matches lost meaning. Promos were derailed by questions about loyalty. Even Heyman looked different. Not nervous, never that. But sharper. More alert. As if he sensed the weather changing. And then it happened. Not with a tweet. Not with a leak. Not with a teaser video. Just one night. One moment. The lights dimmed. The tribal beat hit. And Roman Reigns returned. Raw didn't erupt, it froze. It was less a pop and more a collective breath held across an entire arena. This wasn't nostalgia. This wasn't a hero's welcome. This was a man walking into his old house and daring someone to say they redecorated. Behind him was Hikuleo. He didn't pose. He didn't flex. He didn't even acknowledge the fans. He just walked. Like a bomb that had already been lit. The effect on Raw was instant. Every power structure that had been built in Roman's absence? Cracked. Every new pecking order? Shaken. And Heyman? He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost, one he helped bury. The backstage area shifted in seconds. Stars who had aligned with Heyman suddenly reconsidered their positions. Neutral players scrambled to see where the chips would fall. Those who had spoken Roman's name with disrespect now found themselves watching every shadow. Because Raw was no longer a brand of potential. It was a war zone. And Roman didn't come back to negotiate peace. He came back to settle a score. Heyman's faction had thrived in chaos, but chaos has a price. And now the collector had arrived. When Roman Reigns returned to Raw, the crowd expected power. They expected arrogance. They expected dominance. What they didn't expect, what changed everything, was the man walking behind him. Tall. Silent. Unbothered. Hikuleo. No Titantron. No introduction. No big reveal package. Just presence. 6'8". Over 260 pounds. Stone-faced. Arms like steel cables. Eyes that didn't blink. He didn't speak. He didn't pose for the hard cam. He didn't need to. Because Hikuleo wasn't there for the fans. He wasn't there for approval. He wasn't even there for his own story. He was there to enforce Roman Reigns' vengeance. But to understand the impact of that moment, you need to know who Hikuleo really is. And why his arrival means Roman Reigns isn't just back, he's evolved. This wasn't a surprise debut. It was a strategic checkmate. Let's rewind. Born Tala Fifida, Hikuleo comes from a family soaked in wrestling tradition. Not casual tradition. Dynasty. His father is Haku. Known across multiple generations as one of the most feared, respected men in the business. Not because of championships, but because of what you never heard about him, that he took a step back, that he was ever intimidated, or that he ever lost control. The stories of Haku backstage are legend. Quiet. Deadly. Unshakable. That's the blood Hikuleo carries. His older brothers, Tama Tonga and Tanga Loa, are cornerstones of NJPW's Bullet Club. They were the ones who took the chaos of international stables and turned it into generational dominance. Hikuleo, the youngest of them, was different. He didn't grow up in their shadow, he grew with their silence. While Tama was making headlines with shoot-style promos and Tanga Loa was dominating tag matches, Hikuleo was watching. Studying. Growing. Not flashy. Not political. Just hungry. He debuted in New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2016, but he didn't immediately explode. His rise was slow. Purposeful. While others burned fast and flamed out, Hikuleo kept adding weight, discipline, and pain tolerance. In Japan, pain is currency. And Hikuleo learned how to cash it in. He wasn't the best talker. He wasn't the most acrobatic. He didn't need to be. Because what he brought to every match was finality. When he hits, it's not part of the dance. It's a conclusion. His style? Pure enforcement. Lariats like sledgehammers. Chokeslams with zero theatrics. Ground and pound that feels more like punishment than performance. And when he looks at an opponent, he doesn't see a competitor. He sees an assignment. That's why fans who know him didn't gasp when he appeared beside Roman Reigns. They held their breath. Because they knew, Roman didn't just recruit a fighter. He summoned a consequence. This wasn't Solo Sikoa 2.0. This was something colder. Something less attached. Solo was family. Emotional. A product of internal loyalty. Hikuleo? He's blood, yes. But not Romans. He's Tongan royalty. Brought in not to continue a legacy, but to redefine it. This is what makes him more terrifying than any prior bloodline member. He doesn't need validation. He doesn't need a title. He doesn't even need Roman's approval. He's there for one reason: execute the mission. And when the mission is vengeance, bodies drop. Look back at Hikuleo's track record in NJPW. He was never the star, never the centerpiece of the faction. But he was always the turning point. When factions clashed, when betrayals broke out, when outsiders thought they could test the foundation, that's when Hikuleo showed up. His job wasn't to win the match. It was to end the night. He's been disqualified more times than he's been pinned. Not because he's sloppy, but because he doesn't care about the rules. He cares about results. Sound familiar? That's Roman's ethos in a nutshell. Which begs the question, why now? Why bring Hikuleo into WWE now, after years of being silent about him? Simple. Because Roman knew what was coming. He knew Heyman was building something. He knew that Solo and Jimmy weren't enough. He needed someone outside the system. Outside the drama. Outside the emotional tug-of-war that had drained the bloodline for over a year. He needed someone who wasn't here for legacy, but for war. And Hikuleo answered. Insiders say the deal was in place months ago. That Roman personally requested the call. That WWE creative was told to stay silent. No teases. No leaks. No tweets. Just a hammer waiting to drop. Even backstage, few knew what was coming. When Hikuleo arrived at the arena, he didn't take the main locker room. He didn't meet with writers or shake hands with the boys. He walked in. Sat in silence. Waited for Roman's cue. And when that cue came, he moved like a machine. Now, he's here. In WWE. Under Roman Reigns. But don't mistake that for submission. Because Hikuleo isn't a follower. He's a force. And that changes everything. He's not here to reform the bloodline. He's here to redefine what enforcement means. Remember the previous incarnations? JUSO, the loyal one. A twin stuck in emotional crossfire. Torn between brothers and family duty. Jimmy USO, the conflicted one. Rebellious, inconsistent, passionate, but unreliable. Solo Sikoa, the silent killer. Effective, but young. Still evolving. Still unpredictable. And now? Hikuleo, no conflict. No history. No hesitation. He's not torn between uncles and cousins. He's been summoned like a storm. Roman didn't bring back the bloodline as it was. He brought back an execution squad. One leader. One enforcer. One mission. Destroy everything Heyman built. And anyone who helped him. This is the new era. It's not about family. It's about focus. And Hikuleo is the sharpest blade in Roman's arsenal. If you're on Raw's roster, the message is clear: don't talk. Don't blink. Don't stand in the way. Because Hikuleo isn't here to wrestle. He's here to finish what Roman started. WWE fans have seen a lot of returns. Surprise comebacks. Shocking music hits. Sneak attacks and nostalgia pops. But this was different. Roman Reigns didn't just walk back into the arena. He took it over. It wasn't a return. It was a siege. And the way it happened, down to every second, every movement, every look, was calculated. Purposeful. A message disguised as a moment. Let's break it down. The episode of Raw had already been simmering with tension. Heyman's new faction had just dismantled another tag team backstage. Commentary didn't mention Roman. Not once. Neither did the wrestlers in the ring, or the hosts, or the preview packages. WWE had been meticulous, no teases, no "is the tribal chief watching" suspense. The goal was misdirection. Create a sense of normalcy. Let the fans settle into the new world. Then drop the hammer. It happened right after a mid-card match, a filler segment designed to lull. The kind of thing most viewers expect to fast-forward through. And that's when it began. The lights dimmed, not all at once. Slowly. Naturally. As if something technical had gone wrong. The music didn't start immediately. Just a pulse. A single low drumbeat. Tribal. Hollow. Haunting. Like something ancient waking up. Then the screen faded black. No logo. No fireworks. Just one symbol, the tribal chief's insignia. And then, it happened. Roman Reigns walked through the curtain. The crowd didn't explode. They froze. For a half second, everyone had the same reaction: wait. Is that real? Because the entrance didn't feel scripted. It felt inevitable. He didn't rush. He didn't signal. He just walked. Calm. Measured. Dangerous. Wearing black. No gold. No pyro. Just presence. No championship. No entourage. Just one man. And behind him, something worse. Hikuleo. The first shot of Hikuleo stepping onto the stage behind Roman might be one of the most unsettling visuals in modern WWE. His sheer size was one thing, taller than Roman, broader than most men on the roster. But it was his stillness that hit hardest. He didn't posture. Didn't flex. He looked out at the crowd like he didn't see them. Or worse, like they didn't matter. Roman stopped halfway down the ramp. Looked around the arena. No smirk. No glare. Just that eerie calm he reserves for moments before violence. The camera zoomed in. Not on the crowd. Not on Heyman's shocked face backstage. On Roman's eyes. And those eyes said one thing: I'm not here to talk. Commentary still hadn't spoken. Not a word. Then finally, Corey Graves broke the silence. What is he doing here? Not Roman. Not the tribal chief. Just he. Because in that moment, even commentary knew, titles didn't matter. Designations didn't matter. This wasn't about status. It was about power. Roman stepped into the ring. Hikuleo stood on the apron, his face stone. No mic yet. No music. No entrance video. Just silence. Paul Heyman was seen pacing backstage. His phone out. No calls answered. His new faction, caught mid-interview, froze on screen. One of them dropped a water bottle. Another backed out of frame completely. The ripple effect started immediately. Every camera backstage turned toward monitors. Every producer looked at their headset. Security didn't move. Because they didn't know who to protect. Then Roman spoke. He didn't scream. He didn't ask the crowd to acknowledge him. He didn't even say his name. He said 5 words. You thought I was done. The arena tilted. You could feel it. Then he looked at the hard cam. Turns out. I was just reloading. Then silence again. He handed the mic to a ringside tech. Stepped back. Looked around. Hikuleo finally entered the ring. And still said nothing. Then Roman turned toward the camera again. Heyman. You think you built something? You think you're king now? That throne you're sitting on? I made it. And now I'm gonna bury it. Still no music. The moment ended not with a theme song, but with Roman and Hikuleo exiting the ring. Slowly. No chaos. No attack. But what they left behind? Panic. Backstage footage showed Heyman storming into production, shouting into his headset. His new faction scrambling, some trying to find Roman, others just trying to leave. The roster? Quiet. Frozen. No one knew what side to be on. And that was the plan. Roman didn't return to win the night. He returned to flip the balance of fear. In 90 seconds, he turned Heyman's months of faction building into a house of cards. And Hikuleo? He didn't throw a punch. But his presence said what no words could. This isn't about reclaiming a spot. It's about erasing the people who thought they could take it. And Raw, from that moment forward, was changed. Not just in storyline. In tone. In structure. In power dynamics. This wasn't a surprise appearance. It was a declaration: the king isn't dead. He just changed the rules of war. In wrestling, words matter. Not because they fill airtime, or because promos go viral, but because when the right person says the right thing at the right time, it can shift the entire landscape of the business. Roman Reigns didn't say much when he returned. He didn't need to. His presence shook the arena. But what he did say? It wasn't a promo. It was a warning shot. And the target was crystal clear. Paul Heyman. The man Roman once called Wiseman was now public enemy number one. Let's go back to that moment. Roman stood in the center of the ring, the crowd buzzing, commentary in stunned silence. Hikuleo behind him, standing like a statue made of steel and bad intentions. There was no WWE title belt on Roman's shoulder. No head of the table t-shirt. No grand entrance. That was intentional. He wasn't there as the champion. He wasn't there as the franchise. He was there as the Wrath. When he raised the mic to his mouth, the crowd actually leaned in. Not to cheer. Not to chant. To hear. You thought I was done. That wasn't just a message to the fans, or to Heyman. It was aimed at everyone in the industry who thought Roman Reigns had hit his ceiling. That maybe, just maybe, the machine was finally going to roll on without him. That the Bloodline story had reached its final chapter. But that line wasn't even the real threat. What came next was. Turns out. I was just reloading. That's not a return line. That's a declaration of intent. And what came after made it crystal clear: you think you built something? You think you're king now? That throne you're sitting on? I made it. And now I'm gonna bury it. That wasn't a metaphor. It was a promise. Roman Reigns didn't come back to ask for his seat at the table. He came back to flip the table, burn it, and bury whoever was still sitting there when the smoke cleared. This wasn't about redemption. It wasn't about reuniting the bloodline. This was a Cold War turning hot. Let's unpack it further. For months, Paul Heyman had been laying groundwork for his new faction. A future-facing empire built in Roman's absence. He thought he could build a version of the bloodline without the family drama. No tribal politics. No splintering brothers. Just dominance. But here's what Heyman forgot: Roman wasn't just the face of the bloodline. He was the bloodline. The tribal tattoos, the championship run, the dominance, those were branding. The real bloodline was Roman's ability to control every narrative, inside the ring and out. To make the locker room move around him. To make every title chase, every feud, every match orbit his presence. Heyman tried to replicate that by plugging new faces into the formula. But power doesn't come from the formula. It comes from the fear. And now Roman's returned with something more terrifying than before. Clarity. He's not trying to hold on to a title anymore. He's trying to destroy a usurper. That distinction changes everything. Because when Roman was champion, his mission was to defend the throne. Now? He's burning down the palace and everyone who tried to redecorate it. Let's talk about how he declared war. He didn't challenge Heyman to a match. He didn't demand a sit-down. He didn't use legal threats or contract clauses. He just spoke. With Roman, words are weapons. And when he told Heyman, "I made that throne you're sitting on," he wasn't boasting. He was reminding everyone that Heyman's rise, Heyman's faction, Heyman's power, all of it existed because Roman stepped back. Which means it can all be taken away. The locker room heard it. The commentary team knew it. And Heyman? He felt it. Backstage footage showed him immediately leaving the arena. No interview. No rebuttal. He vanished. Because war had just been declared, and he wasn't ready. The most chilling part of Roman's statement wasn't the threat itself. It was the calm. There was no fire in his voice. No emotion. No desperation. Just cold precision. He's not lashing out. He's executing a plan. And that should scare everyone. Because the old Roman Reigns, the one who demanded acknowledgement, who leaned into family pressure, who had to manage the fragile egos of Jimmy, Jay, and Solo, he's gone. This Roman doesn't negotiate. He doesn't manage. He eliminates. He ended the segment without fanfare. No brawl. No spear. No superkick. No stare down. Just the words. And the silence that followed. That silence was louder than any pyro blast. Because now everyone in WWE has to ask themselves one question: where do they stand? Are they with Heyman's faction, the supposed future? Or are they with the past that just kicked down the door and reminded everyone why he ruled in the first place? This war isn't just Roman versus Heyman. It's a test. Of loyalty. Of fear. Of memory. Because Roman doesn't just want his seat back. He wants to know who stood when he left. And who tried to sit down. This isn't a feud. It's a purge. And it started with one promo. It didn't take long. Roman Reigns' return wasn't just a storyline twist, it was a live grenade dropped into the middle of WWE's backstage ecosystem. What was once a quietly shifting structure under Heyman's guidance instantly became unstable. Wrestlers who were climbing now didn't know where to step. Those on top weren't sure how long they'd stay there. The locker room wasn't just split, it was shook. Because when Roman Reigns declares war, it's not just one man coming back to fight. It's a regime demanding answers. And everyone has to answer for something. The response started before the segment even ended. Cameras backstage caught a wave of unease spreading like a virus. Superstars watching the monitor didn't celebrate or roll their eyes. They leaned in, not to analyze, but to assess. Roman was back. With Hikuleo. And he wasn't smiling. What did that mean for everyone else? Let's start with the obvious, Paul Heyman's faction. The group he built to replace the Bloodline suddenly looked replaceable. The high flyer who had been a breakout star under Heyman's guidance? Frozen. The powerhouse who had been calling out veterans on social media? Missing. And the technician, once the sharpest tongue in Heyman's stable, was suddenly silent. No one wanted to speak for the faction. Because now the faction had an enemy. And it wasn't an aging legend trying to hold on to his legacy. It was a cold, calculating former champion with a new war machine at his side. Heyman? Gone. Reports say he left the arena within 10 minutes of Roman's segment. Not for a promo. Not for a swerve. Just, gone. Like a general who realized the enemy was already inside the gates. But the real tension wasn't with Heyman's camp. It was with the rest of the roster. Roman Reigns hasn't just ruled with a title belt, he's ruled with influence. His word used to dictate match finishes. His presence in guerrilla position was enough to change how talent moved around backstage. He wasn't just a performer. He was a force. And for the last few months, that force had been missing. In that absence, careers bloomed. Mid-carders started cutting longer promos. New faces got TV time. Main event hopefuls began testing the water. And then he came back. And all of that momentum? Paused. Because nobody knew where Roman would strike first. Would he go after Heyman's people directly? Would he target Solo for staying silent? Would he try to rebuild the bloodline, or destroy its memory? No one had answers. Which meant no one felt safe. A few reactions tell the story. Cody Rhodes, a man whose name has circled Romans for over a year, didn't address the return publicly. But sources say he immediately requested a creative meeting that same night. He knows what a Roman war means: disrupted plans, moved main events, possibly another WrestleMania showdown. Cody's arc was clean. His rise was timed. Now? It's uncertain again. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, former thorns in the Bloodline's side, reportedly kept their distance backstage. They didn't comment. They didn't engage. They fought Roman when he was champion, but this? This is a different beast. Roman isn't defending anymore. He's attacking. And that makes him more dangerous than ever. Solo Sikoa had the most uncertain response. Word is, he left the building without speaking to anyone. Not Heyman. Not creative. Not even his own blood. Because here's the unspoken truth: Solo might be the next target. He stayed behind when Roman left. He carried the Bloodline banner on SmackDown. But he also didn't stop Heyman from building the new faction. He didn't speak out. He didn't resist. Roman doesn't forget that. And Solo knows it. Then there's Jey Uso, the man who left it all behind. Who walked out when the family line blurred into something toxic. He's on Raw now, thriving. Tag gold. Fan chants. Freedom. But even he knows, you don't escape Roman Reigns. Not for long. Sources backstage say he didn't even flinch when Roman returned. He just nodded. Like a man who knew this day was always coming. And maybe, just maybe, was ready. But for everyone else, the fringe talent, the hungry up-and-comers, the ones trying to make a name in the post-Bloodline era, this was a seismic shift. Because Roman's return changes the hierarchy. The opportunities that had been opening up? Closing. The rivalries that were just starting to catch fire? Now overshadowed. The title picture? Now haunted. Because even without gold around his waist, Roman Reigns is the gravity again. Every feud, every promo, every faction now has to consider him. And that includes management. Creative meetings were reportedly scrambled. Existing long-term plans paused. Why? Because when Roman returns, he becomes the story. The company can't afford for him to be background. Whether they like it or not, the tribal chief is front and center again, and everything else shifts accordingly. Fans watching online caught it immediately. Threads erupted. Clips went viral. The locker room is in trouble, one fan posted. This isn't a storyline. This is a power play. They're not wrong. Because Roman didn't return to wrestle. He returned to disrupt. And right now? He's succeeding. No one knows who's safe. No one knows who's next. But everyone knows one thing: the piece is over. The tribal chief is back. And the locker room is officially on edge. This isn't a reunion. It's a reinvention. What Roman Reigns returned with on Raw was not a nostalgic callback to the once mighty Bloodline. It wasn't a patched-up family reunion. It wasn't sentimental. It was strategic. Cold. Purpose-built. This is Bloodline 2.0. And it's not about blood anymore. It's about dominance. The original Bloodline was a story of legacy. It was rooted in history. Roman Reigns, flanked by his cousins, Jey and Jimmy Uso, and later Solo Sikoa, carried the weight of generations. The Samoan dynasty. The Inoue family tree. The wrestling royalty badge worn as armor. And it worked. They ran WWE for over 2 years. Unified tag titles. Record-breaking championship runs. They didn't just win matches, they controlled narrative. Even their internal drama became main events. The entire company spun around them. But that version fell apart. Not because of weakness, but because of emotion. Loyalty fractured. Ego splintered. The personal history that bound them together became the same force that broke them apart. Family became leverage. Promises turned into pressure. Love became manipulation. By WrestleMania, the bloodline wasn't an empire anymore. It was a burden. So when Roman stepped away, many assumed he was finished. That the weight of his own creation had finally crushed him. But that's not what happened. He stepped away because the version he built had served its purpose. Now, he's back, with a new design. Bloodline 2.0 isn't about heritage. It's about efficiency. Enter, Hikuleo. The towering Tongan isn't part of Roman's immediate family, but he's family enough. His connection to wrestling royalty is undeniable, but he doesn't carry the emotional baggage of the Usos. He wasn't involved in past betrayals. He doesn't owe Roman anything. And that makes him perfect. Because Roman doesn't need brothers anymore. He needs soldiers. Where Solo Sikoa once played the role of cold-blooded enforcer, Hikuleo now represents a colder evolution. He's not here to prove loyalty. He's here to enforce Roman's will. No hesitation. No conflict. Just pure execution. This dynamic changes the game. In Bloodline 1.0, Roman had to manage the psychology of everyone around him. Keep Jey focused. Manipulate Jimmy. Mold Solo into a killer. It was more about psychology than strategy. But with Bloodline 2.0? There's no need for speeches. No inner circle drama. Just power. Roman speaks. Hikuleo moves. It's simple. And that makes it lethal. But what makes Bloodline 2.0 even more terrifying is that it's not finished. Sources backstage suggest Roman isn't stopping at 1. He's recruiting. Quietly. Selectively. Precisely. And this time, he's not looking at family trees. He's looking at fit. Whispers of Jacob Fatu have started again. A name once too unpredictable for the WWE machine is now being mentioned in the same breath as Roman's next move. The idea of a tag team version of Hikuleo, unhinged, explosive, could make Bloodline 2.0 unstoppable. Other names have surfaced too. Not just Samoan or Tongan athletes. But hungry stars who have been overlooked. Wrestlers with no allegiances. Fighters with no attachment to history. Mercenaries. Because Roman isn't building a family. He's building an empire. One not bound by love, but by fear. And this time, there's no need for explanations. No need for "acknowledge me" chants. He's done asking. Bloodline 2.0 will not be televised in promos, it will be felt in beatdowns, hijackings, and fallout. Consider the structure: Roman Reigns, commander. The strategist. The architect. No longer micromanaging, just directing. Every word calculated, every move with intent. He no longer needs to carry the belt to carry weight. Hikuleo, executioner. Not a bodyguard. Not backup. The final step in every confrontation. The presence that kills noise and sends everyone scurrying. His role isn't to support, it's to destroy. TBD, operatives. Wrestlers to be deployed for tactical matchups. Tag teams. Specialist matchups. Title pursuits. Not family. Not friends. Tools. Chess pieces. And all of them will know their place. That's what makes this different. Bloodline 1.0 was drama. Bloodline 2.0 is order. A militarized operation designed not to coexist with WWE, but to bend it. And Roman's not hiding that. His message to Heyman wasn't just about revenge. It was a notice. You tried to build a faction. I built a machine. And that machine is moving. The internal tone of the locker room reflects that. Multiple superstars are reportedly trying to figure out what Roman's return means for their own trajectories. Some want in. Some want out. Most just want to avoid being noticed. Because being noticed by Bloodline 2.0? That's dangerous. Already, you can feel the shift. Raw no longer feels like a place for experimentation and open opportunity. It feels like territory, and the new sheriff didn't come alone. There's also the business layer. WWE has already trademarked new Bloodline-related merchandise. Not just reprints. New designs. Reloaded. No blood. No loyalty. Just war. This isn't a short arc. This is the new chapter. What Roman learned from Bloodline 1.0 is that you can't lead an army of brothers. You can only lead an army of believers. Believers in mission. In dominance. In absolute control. The Bloodline isn't about family anymore. It's about firepower. And now that it's back? Heyman's faction doesn't just have a rival. It has a problem. Because Paul built his group like a corporation. Roman built his like a hit squad. And in war, the corporate ladder burns fast. Bloodline 2.0 isn't rising. It's marching. And everything in its path is about to get flattened.